Okay, folks, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you very much for joining us today. Others will definitely come on. Just as a note, this is being recorded and it will be posted on the website, Provost website. If you have any difficulty locating that and you want to see anything again, or if you want to pass this along to any of our colleagues, please feel free to call their attention to it. Today, we're going to be talking about promotion to career track professor. This is part of a series of town halls that Laura Hill, your last vice provost for faculty, senior vice provost, essentially for faculty affairs in the provost office, started this process. And now, as I'm sitting in that chair, I'm trying to continue it, and I'm only successful if it can be called successful because of the fantastic collaborators I have, which include Katie Cooper. Katie Cooper is the associate professor in the School of the Environment, and she is an associate dean for faculty affairs in the College of Arts and Sciences. And Stacy Hust, who is a professor and associate dean of faculty affairs in the college and College of Operations in the Murrow College of Communications. And so these folks are here to correct my errors and back me up a little bit when I need it. But what I'm going to do first is have a quick presentation with some slides. This is also only possible because of the help of Haley Hansen, who is a senior principal assistant here in the provost's office. Haley makes sure I get from point A to point B in a straight direction. Besides being recorded, we do have chat functions. You can raise your hand. I assume all of you know how to do these things. If not, just shout. You can also call or email me any questions, follow-ups. Happy to talk with you if you have any questions or concerns. With that, I'm going to attempt to share my screen, which appears to be a volcano today. And I will put my slides up. And I'm going to guess that you can see those now. Excellent. All right, so I'm giving 4 of these town halls, and so career track to professor, career track to associate, and same with tenure track. And I do make mistakes and get them confused. So if I say something wrong, call me on it, and I'll try not to do that. Today, we're going to talk a bit about the process and the potential schedule for how you might go through this process, depending on where you are in your career path. I want to share a few statistics about how WSU has changed over the recent years, and I think for the better in a lot of ways, including with our career track faculty. Talk a little bit about guiding principles and missions and some helpful strategy and tactics to think about as you go through this. But first, I really do want to comment, unlike other town halls, this one has a really diverse, potentially a very diverse audience. And we have career track appointments, including clinical, truly clinical practice subtracks, such as in the med school and others in the vet school as well. Research subtrack, scholar subtrack, teaching. We have librarian and extension faculty. We have faculty in career track paths on 9-month appointments. We have them on 12-month appointments. They're on contingent, fixed term, and continuous contracts. And we have people in different years in rank. So we welcome you all. For those of you who are here, I'm really glad you're taking the time out of your day, and I hope this is worth your time to get a better feel for how this process works. We'll point out that these career track, subtrack appointments were fairly new. They came about starting around 2018, 2019. This was through the work of people like Steve Hines, Judy McDonald, and Laura Hill and others to try and break up what was a bit of an enigma in our old clinical track pathway. Here's an example of what that's doing for us today. So on the promotion statistics from 2018 to 2025 there, this is for the career track pathway. We've had a total of 86 cases, roughly 50-50 male, female. During that time, we've had 1 deferral, and our overall success rate is 98.9% in converting from associate to professor in the career track. And I think that's really testimony to the individuals who helped set up this process, and also to help you, which I'm trying to continue, better understand how to be successful in making this promotion step. We want you to make this promotion step. So we strongly value having our faculty moving forward in a positive direction with their trajectories. So in 18 to 25, we have 86 promotion cases, but notice back in before then, 2013, 2017, we only had 18 cases under the old clinical track system. A lot has changed. And by the way, these numbers from 2018 to 2025 were slow getting started as people were trying to figure the system out, and now we're moving along at a nice clip, so people can keep their careers on path. The histogram there represents time and rank before promotion in the career track from 2022 to 2024. You'll see there's the spike there around 5-6 years is what we typically expect and are hoping for. There is a long tail out, by the way. There's a similar long tail out on the associate to professor in the tenure track. But I think this tail is going to tighten up pretty well in the next 5 years or so as people are moving, figuring out the system, figuring out how to move forward with promotion. And if you are out on this tail, please talk to your chairs, your associate deans for faculty affairs, individuals who can help you figure out how to get recalibrated and moving in the direction we all want you to be moving in. So I'm going to walk you briefly through the timeline on the promotion process. And before this even begins, it is kind of a lengthy period of time. You have upwards of 12 years here thinking about that to identify people both internal and externally if needed to individuals who you think can serve as reviewers for you. Oftentimes that comes from attending conferences or just through your various interactions on campus, recognizing that there are conflicts of interest cases that you can't have, but anyone can write letters of support. Those materials can still be accepted in the review. They just won't count necessarily in those official professional reviews. We do recommend an intensive annual review in a year before submitting for promotion. It's a good way to figure out where you are being viewed within the department. It can help you get any kind of corrective things in motion in case somebody views, in case they feel that you're not on course. It's one of the best ways to figure out how to get aligned with expectations and move forward with this process. In the spring, you obviously are going to be prepping and submitting materials to your department. Department chair is going to be contacting reviewers to get that process started. When external reviewers are not required for clinical track promotion, but some colleges do require them, they're free to do that according to the faculty manual. These take longer to get, so that's why we keep urging people to start early on getting those reviews requested. In the fall semester, your department's going to do a review, which includes faculty ballots, or what we call faculty recommendations. That will then go to the chair or director, who will work with your academic director where appropriate, and they'll produce a review that will move forward to the college, typically to a college promotion and tenure committee, which will also do a review. Then the dean will generate a review, and the BCAA, if applicable, will have comments to add as well. And then the provost committee ultimately comes up to my office, and I manage the provost committee, which will conduct a review. I will then do a review, and then the provost will do a review. So there are a lot of eyes on these dossiers. So for starters, you can recognize that a lot of perspectives are here, and your job is really to produce a very a compelling narrative to really describe the impact you've had, the progress you've made, the production you've had, the positive impact across all your different missions that you're addressing within your units. And then things should go very well. You'll notice I've got a couple asterisks there after the chair, director, academic director review and the dean review. That's because the system is changing this year, at least we hope it is. This is currently being debated in Faculty Senate. I anticipate it will pass. I don't know its exact form. But what we would like to do is, after the chair has finished their what we call the administrative review document, we would like to hand the entire dossier to you as the candidate, and you have an opportunity to review what's been said, summaries, correct any factual errors, and you're welcome to submit a rebuttal if you feel the interpretation is different from what you expected. That will happen again after the dean's review. Your 2 documents, which I'm guessing will be 2 pages long, and I'm guessing you'll have 5 days, business days in both those times to do this, and you will see your faculty ballots or faculty recommendations during this process, is how I'm guessing this is going to work out. All of that goes forward to the provost committee. So if there are any errors in interpretation, or if you feel that the narrative has been spun against you in a way that is unfair, you have an opportunity to bring those points out so that they can be evaluated at the very end at the provost committee and ultimately with me and the provost. So there's this is a big opening of transparency. It's a big departure of our previous culture, which you basically put it in and then you sat and waited as the black box churned away and you had no idea what was going on. It's great for producing anxiety. But at least this way you have an opportunity to correct errors, which is really good in many, many ways for everybody when that can happen. So in the spring semester, the provost will do that final review and we'll announce decisions. Those decisions come out by mid-February. For those of you on the 12-month contract, your promotion is officially starts on that following July 1st. If you're on a 9-month contract, that promotion starts on August 16th. Do want to just make a note that we obviously have a very diverse core mission, particularly as a land-grant institution. Our job is opportunity and access for our students. We have teaching, scholarship, and we do follow Boyd's interpretation of scholarship. This is spelled out in our faculty manual, where we think about scholarship in terms of discovery, integration, application, teaching, and engagement. We acknowledge outreach and engagement and service and leadership, both external and internal. All these components are part of our mission, and all of you may be involved in any one or more of these, and your application your dossier should reflect what you've been doing in those areas. One point I really want to make on this slide is that faculty must be reviewed in accordance with the defined responsibilities of their official job description. And that's from our faculty manual. And what this really tells us is what I tell every review committee, because I meet with every dean's dean's tenure and promotion committee before they start their deliberations. And I remind them that you are here to evaluate based on what the candidate was asked to do, not what you think they should have been doing. That is based on your job description, not based on what other people assume you were doing or think you should have been doing. This is about what you were asked to do and how well you did it. I think I have a comment here on workload allocations. It's critical to finding that progression towards promotion. This is also speaks to a new process that we're currently building, at least wise, bringing up a policy for having a workload allocation process that will better define what your actual workload looks like. And that I believe will make it easier for everyone to conduct annual reviews and carry forward into the promotion and tenure process. That policy, by the way, is I'm giving 3 town halls on it in this month. I don't know the exact dates at the moment, top of my head, but please look out for advertisements for those where you can get a feel for what this is about, provide feedback, meeting with the deans and the associate deans and chairs and directors to talk about this. And we'll be pushing this forward with faculty senate in the fall primarily. And ultimately you'll see it in your own department as all of you will be involved in developing your own contextually appropriate workload policies in your departments. But that's upcoming. Just letting you know, another important change I think that will work to help faculty be more successful regardless of rank or track. On these 2025 procedures, so what we do at the provost office is every year we put out a guidance document. That's a memo, comes from the provost, usually late April, early May. My guess is because of some changes, it'll be early May. This is the rules of the game, so to speak, of how the process will work in the fall, the summer and the fall. And your dean will receive this and will pass it on down to your chairs and directors and ultimately to you to see this. I don't expect many changes from last year. Guidance from last year is posted on our website in the promotion and tenure section of the provost website. The biggest change, of course, will be the insertion of opportunities for you to review your dossiers. Final dossiers are due in the provost in late October, but the deans will give you a timeline of how you're going to complete those beforehand, because remember, you've got to get it through the units reviews, your department or school, and ultimately through the dean's office so that they can make the late October deadline. Once they get to us, we have November and December to do our review process, and ultimately that January, the provost and I will be discussing cases, and he, in this case, Chris Riley-Tillman, will be issuing decisions in February. Again, I think that interactive window for the review process where you can provide review comments, I'm guessing it's going to be 5 days. You won't be able to have a lot of time. Try and get notice out to remind people in case they're traveling to be prepared to watch out for that so we can get things done in a timely fashion. It was already hard to get everything done in a timely fashion. This is a long process, and particularly when you have external letters, it can really slow things down. So we're trying to do it in our window, crossing our fingers we can make this happen through just strong communications. So what's in that dossier? This is really what shows up on my desk when it comes here. I see a team site where I have your administrative recommendation forms, which come from the chair who's working with your academic director, if you have one, your dean, who's also working with the VCAA, if appropriate, for your situation. Your rebuttal forms, I anticipate, will be a new component of the Teams channel or Teams site. Your current CV, your teaching portfolio. Note that there's a 25-page maximum limit for the health sciences and a 5-page maximum limit for all others. Context statements. Traditionally, we allowed 3 context statements, one for research, scholarship, and service. Now we kind of blend it all together, but it's still a 6-page limit. It is good to break this up into the sections, and your college guidance may have more information on how they want this to look. I personally urge everyone to include context statements because I think it's a valuable tool for you to expand on your narrative and help us better understand your journey and your career. It really just gives us context that we don't give with just a CV. Your past annual and intensive reviews will be in this folder. These folders include your review letters, supplemental materials, which could be preprints, pubs, other products, letters from your other colleagues or your community partners. If you have community engagement and outreach. There'll be a copy of the Department on College Promotion and Tenure Criteria and Guidelines, and then the faculty advisory recommendation forms will be there as well. Some other details just to throw out there. Again, we do recommend those intensive reviews in the spring, preferably the spring before, but at least the spring that you're thinking about going up. And please note that this does not go to the provost. This is internal to your unit. The people who are providing, your faculty who are providing the reviews are the ones that ultimately will be providing the reviews on the actual promotion packet. So this gives you a preview of what they're thinking. All qualified unit, a minimum of 5, should be contributing recommendation forms. This could be as many as 20 to 30 in some units. All career track and tenure track professors will submit recommendations for the career track professor promotion. Again, I do also want to assure you that reviewers, external reviewers and internal reviewers do not receive your past annual reviews, and we are looking for a minimum of 4 reviewing letters. All of them that are received, it could be up to 8 easily, assuming you're really lucky. All of these are forwarded. They can't cherry pick which ones come to us, and 2 of these should at least 2 of these should come from candidate recommended writers. Additional letters, example, again, community partners included in the supplemental materials. And I already said this, but I'll say again, the faculty manual only requires the internal reviews for career track promotion, but some colleges do require at least a few external letters as well, so plan accordingly. There are cases where a dean and the VCA may choose not to forward a case for promotion. The faculty still may request that your packet go forward. It's a little harder, but you may have a strong case. And if you want to talk to me about any of those situations, feel free to reach out, and certainly to your associate deans for faculty affairs. We really want to help everyone get in alignment, so we're all in agreement. That usually is the best way for things to progress rapidly. Just reiterating that you should have a position description about your responsibilities and your department missions, and your dossier really should form a narrative around that, so your evaluators fully understand your case and can judge the merit based on what you've been asked to do. Another thing that is fairly new to the clarification in the faculty manual is that you may report an activity and outcome under more than one mission. So for example, you may be employing genuine community engaged methodology in research if that's part of your job, but that's also an outreach component, and you can talk about both of those activities in those areas. Those teaching portfolios include goals, responsibilities, evaluations, results, and exhibits. Hopefully it all fits in 5 pages, but if it doesn't, put it in your supplemental section. We'll take any material you want to provide. There's no limit on the supplemental. And then again, that the statements for context with that 6-page max. I do want to just do a shout out for everyone to keep an eye out. So we're thinking about prestigious awards. These are compounding. That's why I want you to be thinking about them throughout your entire careers as you garner awards. That tends to help you get more awards because as you move into more highly prestigious awards, they usually build on the fact that other evaluators who are independent of your institution in particular have gone through the process of evaluating and seen strong merit, and to give an award that gives greater confidence towards moving forward with additional awards. So I know this is not hugely helpful at this point in your careers, but I do share this with our assistant professors as well to encourage people to engage with the professional societies wherever you can. This gives you a name recognition, individual recognition, which also allows you to seek awards more effectively as you move into that associate rank. And ultimately, as you're gathering those kind of recognitions, you have opportunities to be thinking about more prestigious awards. And don't wait for people just to reach out and nominate you. Advocate for yourself. I have seen candidates for awards that their CVs, I'm looking at wondering what the heck, why has this person not been brought forward before? They've been waiting passively for someone to nominate them. You need to be your own advocate, work purposefully and with a plan towards moving into these directions. It advances your career in many ways, and it's also a big bonus for Washington State University when our faculty succeed in these areas. So that's my shout out for recognition on your part. A couple comments on what at least used to be myths and misconceptions. I don't know how much these still float around, and depends on the context. There's, of course, this is more of a more frequently an issue in tenure track or those with research, higher research duties. So regardless of discipline, opportunity, or necessity, you must have grants to be promoted. Now, that again really depends on that context, and that's why that job description is so important. And there's always an interesting rumor going around in my college that I'm from the College of Vet Med, that only NIH grants count, and which is absurd. In cases if you have a research intensive work allocation, we do expect you to be funded. I don't care where it comes from. It is important that the work's getting done, however. There are cases where people believe that only the sole first authored publications count, yet we encourage you to do interdisciplinary work. I think that's fading with time. There may still be some pockets of disciplines where it is an expectation. At some level, you can't buck tradition, but it's worth recognizing that at the provost level, we're not paying much attention. We aren't paying any attention to that. We are paying attention to if you have a publication component of your mission, that's getting done. That's what's the most important part. There was a long-term perception over years that you don't write context statements because it's perceived as weak. We've dismissed that a long time ago. I actively encourage people to provide that context to better frame your narrative to your reviewers. It's really an important opportunity to be thoughtful. They can be short. You don't have to have all 6 pages. Just be thoughtful and help guide us in understanding how you got there and why you're going there. There is some comment in the past about don't get involved in undergraduate research. That's patently wrong, and particularly this day and age, it's going to be critical to our success going forward, but more so than ever. But it's also really an important component of student retention. Our current provost is very focused on moving forward initiatives in undergraduate retention as we get things figure out how we're going to go forward with the current challenges. There's some rumor that it's harder to get promotion off campus in Pullman, and it's harder to get promotion if doing community engaged research. Once packets have come forward, I've seen no evidence of either of those being true. There may be some evidence before that point where you may be discouraged from going to promotion sooner until later, but I have seen no evidence of it. On the other hand, if people are running into that, I'd like to hear more just to find out what's going on. I have an asterisk next to the community engaged research just to let you know that we are actively funded by the NSF to develop more guidance to help people working in community-based research to better strengthen their narratives and about their impact and the benefits of their work as part of the promotion and tenure process. So they expect more, see more on that coming out this coming year, including more guidance posted on the website and hopefully a very active committee in that area. I also have some resources here I won't bore you with. And from there, though, I'm going to stop sharing. Kick back over here, and before we get started in the Q&A, and my apologies for not being able to follow the chat here, but we'll catch up. I'm going to turn this over to Katie. If you have any follow-up comments you'd like to make.
Nope, not too much, but I agree that like really working on your narrative is really important. So for example, the College of Arts and Sciences, we require a service statement, which oftentimes these end up getting written as bullet point lists. But, you know, we can read bullet point lists on somebody's CV. What we're really looking for is the impact of the service that folks are doing. And so I think that, again, making sure you own your narrative in that space is really important. The other thing in that too, since this is for promotion to full professor, showing that you are starting to lead in these spaces is really important because that's often a requirement for promotion to that top professor level.
Thank you, Katie. Stacy, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so the thing that I would add is to make sure that you understand all the materials you're putting together for your dossier are persuasive in their intent. I'm always surprised by how many people consider their CV to be an informative document. It is not. It needs to be incredibly persuasive. So there are a couple of things to consider when you're crafting a persuasive argument, especially in regards to your CV. If you're saying that you've been involved in a national effort, and for example, maybe you've been invited to participate in a national conversation about something, it's important for you to provide the context to the reviewers. So are you the only individual from your discipline to be included in that conversation? Are you one of 5 people selected from a competitive pool to be included in that conversation? All of that context helps reviewers understand whether or not your involvement in that conversation is prestigious or whether or not everybody gets an opportunity to participate. I am really surprised at the number of people I mentor who fail, mostly out of being humble, but also because they haven't been asked historically to really provide that context. And so I'll see on their CV that they've been involved in something for a national conference, or perhaps they contributed something to a particular project. And I'll ask them some questions, and it turns out it's a really cool thing. And it's actually a really prestigious assignment, or it's something that shows that they have an expertise in a particular topic. And if you haven't provided that information on the CV, all the individual is going to see who reads it is that you've engaged in something. And so even that CV needs to be very persuasive. So I often tell people, provide that context, make sure that individuals who are reading your materials, who know nothing about your field or next to nothing about your field, because when it gets to the provost level, it is reviewed by people who are outside of your discipline, that they have an understanding of what's going on and how well you've done in your career.
Thank you, Stacy. Katie?
Yeah, with that, thanks for bringing that up, Stacey. One of the things I like to do when I lead a professional leave workshop, but I think it still applies here, is I like to ask people what are like the backgrounds of the folks that are reviewing, starting at the department level, going to the dean, going to the provost, because we all know what they got their degrees in. And sometimes that reminds you that you are not speaking the same language as those folks too, because you didn't start with the same kind of disciplinary background. So as a reminder of that, it's fun to like quiz people too and say, do you know what my degree is in?
So one of the, just to elaborate on that a tad bit further, when your dossiers all pile up here in the provost's office, we have a committee of 20 that form subcommittees that then take a group of these and they go through them and have subcommittees that then break down to have people look at this. And you may have somebody from the School of Music, you may have one of those geology people and a communication person all looking at your dossier, and you're from nursing. That's very likely to happen, and that's why that being very succinct, don't get too long, people stop reading, but very carefully crafted narratives that really explain the context of what you've been doing. Can't overemphasize that. And anything else on that? I'm going to jump over to one or two of these questions in the chat. All right. Are achievements that you had before coming to do WSU count? And I would argue that, well, first of all, you provide all of that in your CV. All of it represents the trajectory of what you've been doing, and success before you came here was part of the reason you got hired. But as you show that you've continued that, sitting on your laurels, so to speak, is absolutely part of the story, part of your trajectory, part of your narrative.
One of the things I like to think about for promotion to full is that you've expanded your impact. And so, yes, you have this like prior achievements, but then now what are you doing with that good?
So Damien's asked really about being, if I can rephrase this, being swamped with work that slows your progress in your career trajectory. And, not speaking to any specific cases, I am going to put a shout out to what I hope workload policy will limit those problems going forward. Because we really want every unit to do is define exactly what, so for example, if you're teaching a 3-credit course to 12 students, we know that's going to be inherently less effort than teaching a 3-credit course to 500 students. But some units may be counting those only as a 3-credit course. Now, we can't do that. We do need to recognize and account for effort so that you aren't swamped. Going forward, hopefully that's going to be the case. I can't speak to any specific situation at the moment.
I think the other thing is to make sure you're talking to
Yeah.
your administration and your chair and individuals who are going to be reviewing your case internally. So I always encourage my faculty to make sure that they're talking to the other individuals who will review them. So in the case of people going up for full, make sure all the full professors in your college know of your work. It doesn't hurt to go and set up a meeting with them when you're going through the intensive review process, and just have a coffee, sit down and talk. Make sure that they know what you're doing. You don't want to lobby them, so you want to be really careful not to do that, but it's important for them to know what you're doing. And for you to get a feel of what they value and what they think is important in the full dossier. The other thing, someone had pointed out promotion guidelines. Promotion guidelines for career track faculty are really critical. And it's important that you have really strong guidelines within your unit. So if you don't, that's something you should bring up and help solve. And I think it's really critical that individuals who review career track faculty stick to those guidelines, right? And this is something that Doug was talking about earlier in terms of, you can have any, like in our college, I'm in the College of Communication. I have people going up for full who are career track faculty who are creating documentaries. I have people who are writing publications for national outlets. They're very different, right? And so how are you going to evaluate those two very different things in the same way? And it's important to have open conversation about what that looks like, and to talk openly about how we evaluate those certain things.
So one of my private agendas through the workload policy is to ensure that every department ultimately has an updated and approved bylaws that describe the governance within their unit and the positions that are involved in the administration and how faculty governance works, and that be codified in those bylaws, your workload policy, and how that links to your promotion and tenure policy. And you'd be surprised at how many departments do not have a promotion and tenure policy. They do rely on the college. Depending on the college, they may be looking at a policy from 1999. I need our departments to step up and make sure that their faculty have a full, clean understanding of expectations, and that comes from a department level policy. So I'm going to be really pushing for all of these things to be on the books so our faculty have a clean understanding of what's going on in their own units.
So there's a question in here about what if your joint efforts, like you're co-mentoring somebody, a student, and so you can't necessarily take full credit for outcome, but you've also made a significant impact. I think annotating your CV is one way of also showing that, of saying co-mentoring this. This is what co-mentorship looked like. This is how I helped them. That's something you could also talk about either in a contact statement, or you could talk about it in your teaching portfolio as well, depending on where that best fits in.
Positively impacting student lives is going to be well received regardless, but you provide that context.
Yeah, talk about percent contribution, make sure that you and your collaborators agree, but I think we do this for research, and I think it's important to do this for scholarly activities and teaching activities as well.
I think that's a good idea, and to talk about it with your colleagues ahead of time, so that way when they see it and they don't think it accurately represents what that kind of like relationship looked like, they don't have an initial reaction of like, I don't think so. But instead you kind of like say, this is how I'm narrating it. Do you think that this accurately reflects it or appropriately reflects it?
Is there a minimum time served before promotion? I mean, typically, we follow the same clock, so to speak, between assistant to associate and associate to full. But as you saw in that histogram, there were some individuals with much shorter timelines. That can happen through two processes. One is an early promotion packet where your units and your chair and your dean believe you've met standards ahead of time and they support you going forward, and that happens occasionally. But we also have cases where faculty are hired with different time and rank and experience, and they are given a negotiated opportunity to go up sooner than if you were starting here as an assistant professor and following the normal clock. So there's variation in that, but typically following that same, we like to follow the same clock for both levels as you have. Yeah, so a standardization for percent effort and let's just say publication measurement or anything else you want to put in there. No, we are not. The only standard that we are promoting through this workload policy is that a 40% teaching full time is a 2x2 teaching commitment to 3 credit courses each semester as a normalizer. Recognizing that you can instantly think of about a dozen reasons why this course should be higher and this course should be lower. That's all going to be defined within your unit with the conversations with your faculty and ultimately reviewed by your chair. And it will be part of that, but also your dean. And ultimately, these policies will rise up to my desk as well. To make sure that we're seeing a fair evaluations of people's effort. Now, if your unit feels and wants to argue that 10% scholarship is 1 article a year, then they can document that and we can have a conversation about it. So this is really very disciplinarily contextual as well. Katie?
Yeah, I just want to have a conversation about why it may not always be a great idea to standardize or contractualize or like write down this number of publications per year. When you think about it, that's really then encouraging folks to like focus on quantity. And I've seen this in documents where they say, I want this quantity, and then following below, but we want folks to like focus on quality, or we want to folks to focus on the impact of their work. And that's like very I feel like it's sending very mixed signals. I think it's important though to have a conversation as a unit of when folks do have like a 10% scholarship for career track faculty, what does that mean? And so to kind of have an idea and a framework and kind of norming out in advance about what excellence would look like with that reduced percentage. But I really strongly caution against setting numbers because I think it leads to poorer publications.
Stacy, go ahead.
Yeah, so the other thing I would add is what is helpful though is to look at the hours that you're investing, right? And so it rather than looking at it as a particular percentage of a publication, you want to be thinking about your work week. If you're teaching, 3 classes, what is the rest of your work week needing to look like? What percentage of time are you spending on each of those activities? And so oftentimes when I'm mentoring career track faculty, They'll tell me, well, I don't have time to do creative scholarly work because all my time is taken up by teaching. I totally get it, right? So you see students every day and they are wanting and needing things from you every day. But you have to create within your calendar the appropriate time that you need for service and or creative scholarly work. It's like in my college, for example, it's about 8 hours of creative scholarly work and 8 hours of service. And so you need to be acknowledging that and setting aside that amount of time in order to devote your efforts to that particular project. And that's really important because otherwise we could just be caught up in teaching all the time, and then we have a really great teaching portfolio, but we're lighter on the other two aspects of our job.
Now, units are gonna follow their college guidance as they set up these workload policies. I do want to point out that all we're asking for is that units define examples of what they consider to be satisfactory performance, meeting the baseline. And we'd like them to have examples of what meritorious work looks like. We are finally back to actually allowing meritorious salary increases, assuming there's money. There will be money one day. And the current provost and president have both committed to moving forward after a 10-year hiatus on allowing for merit increases. So we have to have that written down so people understand they have a target. That can be that aspirational work that Katie's definitely referring to. And multiple examples. There's more ways than one. That doesn't have to be one paper per year. More ways than one that can be recognized as meeting this satisfactory performance in any of your workload categories. But we do want it written down so people understand. Other comments, questions, thoughts?
Doug, I wanted to comment on something that Lisa put in the chat. She was talking about defining roles rather than having it just be like you're helping out. And I think this is really important because you really do have to protect yourself and be able to present the work that you're doing to an external audience. So if you're being asked to just jump in or pitch in on a particular project, it's important for you to advocate for yourself to say, I would really like a title for this. Is this a committee? Am I a member of a task force? Is this, is this oversight of something? And to define that role for yourself so that you can put it in your CV. Because it becomes really difficult. If you're just helping out with everything, it's very hard to then articulate in a CV in a way that's persuasive to say, here's how I contributed to this.
Sure. And hopefully with an updating of unit policies where you discuss the actual administrative structure of your organization, you will include those titles. Those explicit positions should be defined. There's two roles in that. One is to do exactly what Lisa's asking for, giving you a title for an assigned role and expectation. It's also to kind of control the proliferation of titles by where things are being handed out in the good old boy network. We're going to give you a course reduction because the chair likes XYZ, and I'll just give you some title and you don't really do anything. Kind of done with that. We need to have well-defined roles, and I'd like to have that codified in the bylaws so there's no surprises to the faculty about who's doing what, and people understand what people are doing. But to get that right, Lisa, we need to make sure that the roles that you're talking about are recognized and codified in those bylaws. And if things change, by the way, they will, we can adjust those bylaws, but that requires an active, regular review of bylaws and participation of all the faculty. Make sure your voices are being heard. You are all allowed to share in shared governance. That's why we call it that, and be involved in how you're being recognized. Anything else, folks? Melissa.
Hey, good morning. Just a couple quick questions to clarify our job description. That is what's spelled out in our contracts. Okay. And I know many of our colleges no longer require the use of activity insight. Has that changed anything about this process?
So that was largely my doing. For those colleges that don't use Activity Insight, I was able to convince the office, the provost, that we shouldn't ask you to use it. There are 2 colleges that do. Connors leans into it, and the College of Business leans into it. And if they ultimately want to continue doing that, they actually know how to, and they will do so. That contract will be up next year. Now, having said that, there's no expectation that Activity Insight will be used going further, but as you know, there's an AAPO, which is our administrative review process, well, not administrative, but academic review process, where the committee is trying to develop some kind of metrics to give us some kind of measurement of progress and over time in different buckets of activities at the institutional level. It is possible that at the conclusion of their work, they will decide that the best way to collect metric X is using something like Activity Insight. Now, if institutional research decides that's the most efficient way to do it, if we update some things on Activity Insight, that component at least would be included. And I am urging everyone, when they talk about this, to ensure that whatever we're collecting is being used, that we're not doing large sweeps and wasting faculty time collecting information that is not used and is unreliable. But if it's something that's involved in a metric, faculty have a bit of an incentive to have their contributions reflected in those metrics, if that's the case. Now, the other way this could work is the president could say, everyone's doing Activity Insight, we're done with this. And in which case you're doing Activity Insight. So I haven't talked to her about this, but my guess is that we'll continue on our current approach of trying to give you a minimal amount of paperwork as gives us the best data to answer the questions, to move forward, really focus on your individual reviews as a faculty-focused annual review process and not as a data collection exercise. Katie pointed out, I strongly suggest putting your workload percentages in these dossiers. And going forward, I'm really hoping we are going to have a page, I'm going to make more paperwork for you, in Workday, where you will list and keep a longitudinal record of any changes in your workload allocation. Our workload policy committee is proposing 7 buckets, not just the traditional 3 of research, teaching, and service. We're breaking service out. We understand there's a Venn diagram of overlapping activities, for example, between extension and service, but lumping extension into service is not fair to or respectful of the contributions that they're making. They will have if you have an extension appointment, it will be described as an extension activity, not as lumped into service. Similar, clinical practice will have its own distinct category, as will administration will have an explicit recognition besides the service category. And then, can't remember my last one. So anyway, that's all part of the conversation going forward, and ultimately Faculty Senate will be involved in deciding whether they really want us to do that or not. Make sure your voices are heard on that as you see what we're proposing and whether you like it. If you don't, tell me why. Make suggestions on how we can do things differently. I'm looking at some people here who have extensive background in shared governance, and I look forward to them being involved in these conversations. Carl.
Yeah, thanks. So I was responding to that last chat question and your comment about your contracts. I'm at the College of Medicine, and I've had, I think, 4 or 5 different roles since I started, with different contracts, with different percentages, and I have not kept track of all of that. Is that currently tracked? And does those contracts, are they things that the department adds into my dossier, or am I supposed to find those and add those into my dossier?
So your annual reviews hopefully have that information recorded, documented on them. Yeah, I know yeah. Yeah, trying to fix that, Carl. Unfortunately, retroactively might be harder.
Thank you. I'm just going back for the last 10 years. I've
Yep.
had like 5 different jobs at the college, so I'm just with different roles and all kinds of different changes. So yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
understand.
really important though, if you can find that out, and then that context statement that Doug is suggesting. So I recently had a couple of people in my college got for promotion who, like you, have been here for a while, and they've had a variety of positions, and maybe they worked part-time for a little bit, then they were full-time. I went through the whole thing and listed, here's their workload across their entire career at WSU. And I felt that it was really important to do so, because then people are evaluating you accurately. If they're evaluating you by your most recent, that is not likely going to be accurate, especially when we had individuals move from instructor tracks to career scholarly tracks in around 2019. Those are two very different things. If you're teaching more one year, teaching less another, you don't want somebody evaluating you on creative scholarly work when it's not in your contract for over 5 years, right? So I think it's really important, and the more complicated it is, it might even be worth creating a little table and showing over time, here's what my workload distribution was, and including that in your context statement, so that people can really assess what it is you were supposed to be doing during the time that you're going up for the review.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I would also do this for yourself, rather than, assume that you have a thoughtful person behind the scenes like Stacy, who will go through and make sure that all gets documented. If you are having a hard time tracking and finding all of those contracts, I mean, work within your department first, then go to your college level, but HRS should also have records of it as well. But like your individual contracts don't end up anywhere in your materials. The chair should be providing that like kind of like overview of, again, your appointment and your positions. But I would also own that narrative as well.
And I can't stress how important it is.
Right.
Having served as I've served as both an external reviewer for a number of universities across the country. I've also sat at the university-wide for the first time this year, the university-wide tenure and promotion. And it's really, really critical, because our jobs change throughout our careers, and especially as you're going up for full. And if you haven't provided that context, the reviewer has no information about how to judge you, except for the most recent. And that can result in an unfair judgment, because it's not accurate, right? So it's absolutely critical that you spend the time getting that information before going up.
I would also make sure you have that conversation with the chair to make sure everybody has the accurate information as well, because I've seen some mismatch in knowledge about the workload and how it has or hasn't changed.
I'm going to briefly share a model that I've been throwing around, thinking about academic careers. Assuming you can see this while I talk, because suddenly I've lost everybody on my monitor. So this is what I call an academic career model. I don't know how often this applies, depending on again, we are dealing with an incredibly diverse group of positions here. But this is an example of what we oftentimes see, certainly in the tenure track, where you have some focus in scholarship, teaching, and a little bit of service in your foundational period as assistant professor. But as you've reached tenure, or you've advanced into the associate rank, we often branch out to fill in other leadership roles at the institution and in public engagement, student success, and you may end up in any of these other areas you see on the right on the screen here. Making sure that your narrative describes that is really important.
We don't see what you
We
see.
can't see what you're sharing.
I actually have to hit the share button. How's that? There we go. Sorry about that. I had it set up, just hadn't quite finished. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is my crude model, and I am not an artist, as you can tell, so I would not do well in that area. But we do again see typically on the tenure track a lot of emphasis in the scholarship, the teaching, and the service early on, and that's where the focus tends to be. But as you move up in rank, and this is true in career track, as your talents become obvious to your leadership and your passions become obvious to you, and where you want to start digging into different places where that flexibility is allowed and can be accommodated, you can start doing a whole lot of different things in your academic career. And but that needs to be captured in that narrative. So particularly in that associate to professor rank, because you're starting to migrate into different areas, and people looking at that, as Stacy and Katie have pointed out, if they're looking at where you are now versus what you've been doing before, it's gonna be hard to match up efforts and productivity with expectations, depending on how things have changed for you. By the way, I think this is the most amazing thing about our jobs. You know, we can reinvent ourselves and contribute in different ways. We're not stuck in the rut for our entire career, and that's a huge value to you. It's a huge value to the institution. So just all right, I'll stop sharing.
Now, if I could add a thing related to what you just said, it's
Yeah.
important to, with all those service commitments, to really be clear of how much time it's taking. And so, you know, if, don't just say you're a member of the AAC or you're a member of Faculty Senate. Tell the reviewers, I belong to Faculty Senate, it means twice a month, this is how long I'm paying, I have to be there, this is how much homework I'm doing to prepare, right? Talk about the investment and the time so that the reviewers have a real sense of what that service means.
We're also encouraging different major committees on campus at the university level to start to write up service effort documents to actually tell chairs and directors how much effort's involved. And the best model, and just, I don't know why we're not doing this all the time, but IRB just came out with, well, if you have a 20% contribution to IRB, this is what it looks like. And if you have a 10%, this is what it looks like. So now your chair and directors and your faculty can better understand what the heck are you doing on the IRB. I've since asked the IACUC and the IBC, if you're involved in any of these regulatory compliance pieces, to do the same. Faculty Senate has also expressed interest in doing this for their various committees because some don't have much load, others can have a lot of load. I would library subcommittee, just as an example, is an extraordinarily busy group. So. Yep. All right, folks, we're at time. Again, reach out if you have any questions or concerns. Information will be posted on the website from the Provost office. If you have any trouble finding that, holler and we'll get you connected. And it's great seeing everybody. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Stacy. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.